We've been talking about how suddenly Saturday Night Live has become willing to make fun of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And to a large extent, that feels like even comedians can no longer fail to acknowledge how unpopular Joe Biden and Kamala Harris actually are. And I saw over the weekend, Buck, I was watching Bill Maher, and he had a good point, which we have made for basically a month now, that you have to ask the most central question about the Ukraine conflict. And that central question is, if Trump was such in cahoots with Russia, which obviously he wasn't, but why didn't Vladimir Putin invade during the 4 years that Trump was in office? Why did he wait? And that's a question that the most anti-Trump people don't have a good answer for. And building on that, even Trevor Noah, who I'm not sure I've ever seen him make fun of a Democratic politician, at least not in recent memory, even he was talking about how embarrassing it was for Joe Biden not to be able to get on the phone with the UAE or with Saudi Arabia as he's been attempting to negotiate for more oil so the price of oil wouldn't be skyrocketing as much as it is. When people like Trevor Noah on The Daily Show, who took over for Jon Stewart, and by the way, we took over for a legend. Trevor Noah taking over for Jon Stewart, is it fair to say that that's been an unrequited disaster, Buck? I mean, that in terms of influence, like, do you hardly even hear The Daily Show matter anymore?
I think The Daily Show was probably the single most effective point of Bush criticism in the media during the Iraq War years for the Democrats. And I think that Trevor Noah isn't able to get anywhere, not even a fraction of the relevance. Although I do think he's paid like $15 million.
Yeah, of course he is.
Because, corporate media, they can pay people whatever they want to pay them. But, yeah, no, he's not.
I just don't remember him even hardly making news, right? Like in any way, negative or positive, since he's taken over in any way.
I mean, if he wanted to be relevant, maybe he would follow more in. And, I'm sure his audience is like, probably has, I don't know, close to 1 million people maybe watch that show a night, something like that. But you see what Bill Maher's done. Bill Maher is speaking to people on the right. Bill Maher is saying things that at least show a willingness to grapple with reality, although, as I said, don't ask him about climate change because he's a lunatic on climate change. But on some issues, wokeness and COVID stuff, he's like, okay, enough is enough. There is a window here for people to actually speak to their own side because libs will never listen to you and me, really. By the way, centrist Democrats, I hope all of them listen to this show and give us a chance.
I think we've got a lot of them. Buck.
I think we've got some, but I'm talking about the hardcore, Antifa supporting, announce my pronouns when there's nobody even listening to me. Like those people.
If you're a pronoun person, you're probably not listening to our show.
The pronoun announcers do not listen to this show, but there are Democrats who I think could speak to them and would be doing the country a service. By the way, we need to play the Trevor Noah.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I want to play the Trevor Noah. This is one of the first times I remember even having a Trevor Noah clip that was circulating at all on social media. I saw he was trending, and I was like, I wonder what he said, and this is what he said.
Saudi Arabia isn't playing ball with Joe Biden. And you know what? You can say what you want, but this would have never happened to Donald Trump. Never. No one was ever ignoring Donald Trump's calls. Yeah, because if you ignored Donald Trump's calls, you didn't know how he would respond. Maybe he'd send an angry tweet, or maybe he'd just ban your country from everything. You don't know. That's why I bet in these situations, Biden actually wishes that he could hire Trump to step in as president wildcard. Just keep everyone on their toes. Because if Trump was calling, you best believe the UAE, they'd be racing to pick up the phone. Oh, Mr. Trump, we're here, hello? Too late, Ahmed. You made me wait 2 rings. We're bombing the UAE and the UFC, just in case.
No, he's making fun of Trump, but there is some truth to what he's saying, actually. I mean, this is what, because I remember when Trump was president, I would always say, when he was dealing with any of the tyrants on the world stage that you can name, whether it was Iran or North Korea or Putin or whomever, it was always, you don't know how this guy's going to react to you. And, you think about it this way. If you're picking a fight, if you're a bad guy, if you're a bully and you're going to pick a fight with someone in a bar, you don't pick a fight with the guy that you don't know what he's going to do in response. You pick a fight with the guy who's going to say, oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Oh, can I buy you a drink? Trump wasn't the I'm going to buy you a drink guy. That's for sure.
No, and I think that's underlying the essence of why Putin didn't invade Ukraine. He was afraid of what Trump might do. He didn't know. And there's an element of value in having that uncertainty associated with it. Right now, Russia knows what exactly. I guarantee you they can sit down and map out exactly what Joe Biden is going to do, because the United States is trying to be very clear in creating expectations for Russia. Trump would not have played that game. And there is, look, while Trevor Noah is making a joke at the end there, the premise of his joke is accurate. The UAE and Saudi Arabia would not have refused to speak with Donald Trump on the phone. And by the way, I think if Donald Trump were president, first of all, Ukraine, I don't believe would have been invaded by Vladimir Putin. But if it had been, I think Trump would have had good enough relationships in the Middle East, Buck, that I believe Saudi Arabia and other Middle Eastern countries that are allied with Saudi Arabia would have produced more oil. I think they would have been willing to help to defray the cost of oil around the world by producing more in order to curry favor with Trump and have and maintain good relationships with his administration. I really do believe that.
I mean, let's be honest. And Trump's advisors didn't want to upset him. You can imagine if you're one of these dictators that you think you're going to outplay chess on the Trump board, he might outplay Trump on the chessboard. The Trump board would also be cool. He might
surprised that's not its own business for the Trump family right now.
Might have just stumbled on something there.
I was out with a bunch of people there. They said, let's go someplace expensive. So I took them to a Chevron station. That's the thing. We can finally leave the house, and we can't afford to drive anywhere. There is a gas station in Mendocino County here in California charging $8.45 for a gallon of gasoline. For that money, they should check your oil and your prostate.
It's expensive out there, folks. Even Bill Maher, guy's got plenty of cash, but he knows it's rough. I mean, over $8? I didn't even know that had happened yet in California. Over $8 a gallon. Let's understand that in states like California, because of all the taxes and restrictions and decisions that have been made, gas is more expensive in that state than it is anywhere else in the country. It's also one of the reasons, or rather the environmental lobby is the primary reason that housing prices remain so high there, because they prevent developers from doing what they would do based on market forces. It is very hard to build, particularly middle-income housing, anywhere in California, anywhere near the coast. I mean, you can do it deep in the interior where the rich people don't live, but if you want to do it anywhere near the coast, they make it really hard because, the Delta smelt will be upset or something. There's always some problem from an environmental perspective, which just brings me to the near religious zeal of the climate movement and how they can make anything about climate change. Clay, we talked about this before. I tweeted about it over the weekend. I meant to send it to you guys. This is in the Atlantic. On top of everything else, nuclear war would be a climate problem. And he goes into this. When we talk about what causes climate change, we talk about oil, gas, cars, generally energy policy. And he says, but energy is not the only domain that has a direct bearing. So does foreign policy, specifically nuclear war. And he's talking about what would happen if nuclear war broke out. It would kill tens of millions of people very, very rapidly.
Yes.
Probably destroy the entire planet as we know it.
Yes.
But over time, Clay, the climate change would also get really bad.
I understand that there are many people out there that are focused on political issues that are truly that make them insane. And I think the COVID insanity certainly has worked, but I tend to think that it goes away at some point. I don't know how the climate change people ever go back to normal. And I foresee it becoming wilder and wilder going forward than it even is right now. But just imagine if you had a semblance of sanity in your media organization. If somebody pitched to you the idea, hey, nuclear war could kill millions of people. But you know what we're not paying enough attention to? What it could do to the climate. That you would okay that idea. That you would say, you know what, that seems like a very logical and reasoned part of this discussion that is not receiving enough attention. It's like when CBS did the story during the Ukraine invasion, Buck. Remember about the difficulty for transgender people to get transgender respect in Ukraine? And they said they were fighting a two-fronted war. And you're like, I don't really know that I consider those to be equivalent wars.
The left takes seriously. There's the old joke in journalism that, lib journos, if the headline was "World to End Tomorrow," the subheadline is "Women and Minorities Hardest Hit." And they actually, at some level, they take that almost seriously. Like, they're like, oh, yeah, no, that's real. They would be the hardest hit if the world ended tomorrow.
Yes, if we all died, the people who would take it the most, definitely women and minorities.